Welcome everybody. We're just getting our AV all sorted. We'll be with you very shortly, but in the meanwhile I'd just like to remind you that we have a conference app which most of you have downloaded by now. We have a Twitter handle which is trending so well. We've just noticed we're trending better than the New Zealand Bachelor, which presumably is trending very well. So we're pretty chuffed. Over 500 people have downloaded our conference app, so that's being used really well. There's lots of opportunity online to post a question to speakers during the session, and we'll do our best to locate your questions and ask the presenters to answer them. If we don't get to them, we'll make sure that they are sent your questions and can reply in person. We also have a second app which you might have heard of by now called the Buzzy Bee Augmented Reality app, Buzzy Bee app, available on the Google Play Store or Apple Store. And around the conference center you'll find 9 posters which you can scan using this app, and it's a great example of educational AR. So how are we doing? Right. So this session is enabling better data discovery of records across archives, institutions and libraries. And let me tell you a little bit about Michael McGuinness and Professor Mark Finnane. So Michael McGuinness is a senior analyst undertaking business analysis and project management activities. Michael began his career as a Windows Server Systems administrator in the corporate sector, where he was able to work with clients to meet their needs using analysis and server design skills. Michael has a Bachelor of Information Technology from Griffith University and industry certification in project management and business analysis. Are you ready? And Professor Mark Finnane is a professor of history at Griffith University in the Criminology Institute. He's also the author of a book, and I think we're going to listen to a very fascinating talk. I welcome both onto the stage.
Some difficulties in being able to actually show you our slides. This all worked perfectly in all our practicing this morning, but that's generally the way the stuff works out. When the big show's on, everything fails.
Professor Mark Finnane, perhaps I could ask you to tell us a little bit about your role at Griffith University while we wait.
Sure. Yes, so I'm Professor of History at Griffith Uni. I'm an ARC Laureate Fellow, which is a grant of research funding for 5 years to run the project that we're discussing today, which is the prosecution project, the history of the criminal trial, of criminal prosecution in Australia over very long periods of time. I'm based in the Griffith Criminology Institute, but I'm a card-carrying historian, so I bring history to research questions that in a lot of ways are informed by criminology and also by law, criminal law, legal history. So this is a project that we have developed as a collaborative investigation of the process of criminal prosecution over the course of early Australian history from the 1820s to the 1960s. And the reason for the presentation today is because we're now starting to think about the ways in which the work we are doing, the access to the archives that inform the sources that inform the research of the study of criminal justice history. We're interested in seeing how our data might be fed back to the archives. And when we get our slides ready, we'll be able to show you how that works.
Take it out, yep.
We do apologise for this. As you know, technology is technology, isn't it? But this is your stage, so
That's okay, yeah.
would you like to start without the slides?
Yeah, this has really put us on the spot. That's okay.
You'll be fine.
I've got them all memorised. It's okay. I don't need the slides. So I'm a business analyst at Griffith University, so I work with researchers like Mark to be able to enable them to have technical solutions without having to know all the tech that runs behind it. So I worked in cooperation with Mark to build the prosecutions project, and that's actually brought us some really great outcomes, and we're about to link that with the archives. So we've got all these archives around Australia that we're trying to, that have these great data sets but don't have a way to share them. So Mark has been able to build those relationships with those archives and be able to get data sets from them. But it's about how can we share that metadata that Mark has been able to, I suppose, produce. Mark, did you want to talk a little bit about the prosecution project?
Well, let me start by talking a little bit about how researchers in historians, typically, and in my area, criminal justice history, how we've worked with archives in the past. So I've, in fact, been working with putting data from the archives onto computers for quite a long period of time, for longer than, you know, some people in this room have probably been alive. But 30 years ago, I was involved with a very interesting project on policing in Queensland. We accessed police watchhouse books, which are composed of the arrest proceedings as people get taken into a police watchhouse. The police note down their data and the charge and the outcome of the process. And we accessed those. We did so by going to the archives office, sitting down with the watchhouse books, drawing up a special form that I designed to capture all the data, copying down in pencil the information that was in the archives, go back to the university, get onto a mainframe terminal, code the text data that we accessed and put that into the mainframe, and then do our analysis if we were doing quantitative work. And that's how we did research over the last 20 or 30 years. The characteristics of this way of doing research are that the data is accessed for the particular research project. It's typically used only once, and it's not shareable with any other researchers or with other communities of interest. So we plundered the archives, took what we needed for our particular question, produced our books and articles, and the data just sat in a drawer before eventually it was thrown out. So that's the way in which we've used the archives in the past. Now, the enabling technologies of the web over the last 10 years have started to transform the way in which we can access this data archive and produce data that might be reused by the researchers themselves for new questions. And very important, be shareable by other researchers. So the process of accessing the data, putting them into a permanent database. In our case, we put it into an SQL database. It's able to be stored in the longer term in a repository. We'll have all the necessary metadata attached to it that will enable it to be accessed by other research teams and potentially by other institutions. And it's that potential that lies behind the project that we're developing and that Michael is going to talk about.
Yeah, so that brings us to what the Culture and Communities project is trying to achieve. So we have this concept of a 360-degree data sharing model where we have the archives, they're allowing their records to be discoverable, and then we have the research groups that are able to use that data, and then they may be able to give value to the community via a journal article or maybe producing a book. And then the 360 data model continues on to giving that data back to the archives. But that's where we've actually got a bit of a problem, is that this value that these researchers are actually producing isn't making its way back to the archives. So in the example of the prosecution project, there's a lot of data that's been transcribed and converted into really great records that can be searched. We've got visualization tools built into prosecution project that allow all those things to happen. But there's no way to give that original data back to the archives. So a good example has been working with the Tasmanian Archives and Heritage Office, named by short for TAHO, and we've got some slides back. This is good news. If you want to talk to us on Twitter, we are available on Twitter. Please connect with us. We have some other opportunities at the end as well. So Mark's already talked to you a little bit about the prosecution project. Mark, did you want to just run over in case there was anything there that...
I'll just make a couple of other points. Our data comes primarily from the records maintained by the courts, and you see an example on this page. Typically a structured data that's quite easy to put into a structured database. The process I was discussing with you about how research used to be done is well illustrated from this survival from my own archive of the work that I was doing in 1987 with a bespoke form and the traces of the work of previous research assistants and my own blue scribble all over it as well. So we have moved on through that time towards the process of accessing the material and putting it into a digital environment that's shareable, that involves potential reuse by other researchers and importantly by other types of communities that sit outside the formal research community. A lot of our data is not just about the courts, it's about families and communities in past time. And an important part of our project as we've developed it has been the developing the capacity for crowdsourcing to get volunteers involved with accessing our data and putting it into our database. And that's because our sort of data is able to be used by many different communities. So I don't know if we've got time to have a quick look at... Yes?
Yeah, I think we might, yeah.
So can we start that video? So this will just illustrate a couple of key points about the process of data access and entry.
Hi, this is a live demo for the Prosecutions Project website. So, first of all, just wanted to show you about the website. We've got all these different tabs across the top. But firstly, become involved. We click on that button, allows us to become involved in the project, fill in this form, and then your information is processed by our admin team. Okay, so first up, I want to show you the search trials functionality that we have. And this is a search page that we have a basic search as well as this advanced search option. That's the one I'm going to be using today. I'm going to be searching in South Australian Court and looking for the year 1845. First one that we see here is Robert Hall. So we get these different information that's brought back. One of the really interesting parts is that as the transcriber goes through the transcribing process, they actually also look for the ability to find information in the Trove website, which is a collection of newspapers provided by the National Library of Australia. So I'll click on that link and we'll see if we can find Robert Hall. So here we are, this newspaper is loaded and I'm looking along and I notice Robert Hall's been mentioned here. So that just shows that the transcriber has been able to find Robert Hall, and you can see that quite easily here. If you do want to go and look for more information on Trove, their URL trove.nla.gov.au. I'll close that one off. All right, so that's our search page. We're going to go back to the main site and I am going to log in here. Okay, welcome to the secure database side of the prosecution project. You can see this is what the admin team used, but I just wanted to come in here and just give you a little bit of an example of how
this is the data entry
information
side
is transcribed. So these are the ones that have already been transcribed, but I think I can still show you what we need. So I'm going to click on update here for James Fleming, and it's going to load the information that's already been entered. as well as the image. So I'm noticing here we've got number 294, which is the physical book, and 294 we've got Fleming, and you can see his information here, 294 and 295, and that's how a transcriber works through. They go through this and they see how they can transcribe data. So we can see Fleming and it was stealing, and we've also can see the information about where his trial was held, and all those bits of things. So that's just something I wanted to show you, just so you understand how the transcribing side of the application works as well. Okay, thank you for taking that time, Mark. So I talked to you about the Cultures and Community Project. So I've put up here on the slide the participating institutions. So plenty of great key partners that we have available. Just a special mention there to URSA, eResearch South Australia. They're actually leading the project for us, and it's been a really great collaborative effort so far, and I'm sure that's going to continue. Okay, so the archives in the partner locations. As you can see, they're all just around Australia, and we've just marked out the key ones there being Tahoe and Prosecutions Project and URSA. So what are the aims of the project? So we want to connect researchers to archives. And then we want to be able to produce a pilot where we're actually sharing data between two entities. So this is a 360 data model that I was talking to you about earlier. Now, I've already given away what's going to come next, which is that there is a blockage between adding value and getting it back to the archives. And that's what we're trying to achieve on the CNC project, is how can we allow that great value of data that's getting through from those research groups and give them back to the archives so they can enrich their own data sets. So just some of the goals. We want to make it extensible. We need to make it reusable. It needs to be scalable. In the pilot, we might only have 2 entities. One day, maybe we have 20. It needs to be the same. We need to be able to make so that we can extend this sort of framework that we're going to use in the API. And we also want to keep the barrier entry quite low. So archives don't have a developer for 3 weeks that can spend time making the solution work. They've got hours. And so it needs to be easy to set up and get going. So just a bit of a roadmap here where we've gone through and identified the trends and drivers that we've found. We've then looked at an environment in the GLAM sector. We've also brainstormed technologies and standards, and also taken feedback from the other key project partners on what they're using, what they found worked for them. And also had conversations with research and other entities, such as the Prosecution Project. We haven't had a chance to speak to everyone. It's just not possible in the project, but we've tried to capture just a small subset that allows us to get the answers that are going to help us produce something. Okay, so the proposed solution and what we're going to use in the pilot. So we're going to try to link data between the Prosecutions Project and Tahoe. Tahoe already have a really great digital presence. I'll show you coming up a little bit of demo of how advanced their website is in regards to being able to share data. And we're going to use the Dublin core with an OAI PMH server. So these are very tried and proven standards. While they're not earth-shattering or the most groundbreaking standards, they're going to work. And for a pilot that we're trying to produce, we really need to make sure that we've got something that is going to just allow that data to be shared. In the future, we could always look at increasing the standards or making other ones available as we go through. So just wanted to show you a little bit about the current state that we're in. So the analysis that we've undertaken has shown us that, at least with the pilot partners between Prosecution Project and Tahoe, at the moment, Tahoe manually provide images to Prosecution Project. A lot of the time that is coming through by sending a hard drive. So a hard drive gets put in the mail and gets sent to Mark, and then he goes and puts it onto his systems. It's quite old school. It works, it does the job, but there must be a better way. And that's the same with Mark sharing that data back to the archive. He might send a spreadsheet or a small subset of those information. There just has to be a better way. There are much more proven standards that we could be using. So what we're looking at trying to do is seeing if we can put in we will be putting in an OAI PMH server into the Prosecutions Project environment, and that will allow Tahoe to come in and harvest the data out of prosecution project so they can use it in their own systems. A question that I have for myself is, well, how does Tahoe actually know which images to line up with what data? Something that we've only found through, I suppose, just working through the project together is that Tahoe, when they share their images, already embed metadata of their permanent image identifier. So that allows Mark to transcribe that image ID, put it into his data, and then he can quite easily, when the data is harvested, they can make that linkage together. So I'll just show you, there's a quick video here which actually talks about something really great that we've already been able to link in the project, which we didn't actually think was going to be possible, but we've already made advancements, and I'll show you that one now.
One of the major partners of the CNC project is the Tasmanian Archives and Heritage Office. They're a section under the Tasmanian Government, and their website is the link branded, which is about learn, discover, and access. So it covers all of their libraries. But what I wanted to show you was their names index, which is, so we're just going to search for John Brown here, and we're just going to focus on convict records for John. So we're just going to scroll down here and have a look at this one here. So James John Brown, I can see his conduct record here, so we can click on that one, and this will actually load up his record, which these are similar records that have been transcribed by the prosecutions project, so we can see his information here. I just wanted to show you that one of the advancements that we have had so far using the CNC project is we've been able to actually link some of the records directly to the Tasmanian Archives and Heritage Office, and we've been able to put those links into our search results. So we'll have a look here at the advanced search, and then I want to look for a particular record. So we're going to be looking in the Tasmania, and we're going to be looking for the year 1843. So we'll notice that we've got some links here off to the side, and we'll just have a look at one of those links. So we're looking for John Bird, and we can see that we're going off here to the Tasmanian Archives Heritage Office website, and this is the actual image that was used to transcribe. So we've got that linked there. That's available off the search results, and we can see we're looking for John Bird, so we're making sure, yes, and I can see John Bird's name is just here. So you can see how that's easily happening, but that's a really great advantage from the CNC project that's allowed us to link directly from prosecution project into the Tahoe's website.
Okay, so talking to you a little bit about some future uses that we'd like to do. It's not going to be a part of this current phase of the project, but it's something that we're hoping to be able to do in the future. So the advantage of having a names entity recognition workflow. So this allows for sets of text to to identify people's names. So if there's John Brown instead of text, it's able to detect that and say, well, that's a person's name. It just allows a very simple way to produce metadata without having to have someone manually transcribe that. We've also got a connection to a UMNI solution, so that's a unique names identifier. We've been very fortunate that towards the end of some development work that we've been doing on the prosecution project, we're able to add value by putting in a data linkage component, and that actually allows for, say, John Brown. We know he's 5'11", he has brown eyes. We've come across his name a few times. We might have used other data sets like a police gazette to actually confirm that that is the same John Brown. So we basically confirm that we've got John Brown, we assign him a person ID, a unique identifier, and then we can add to that data to get more sources. Wouldn't it be great, and I remember having a long conversation with Mark about this, if we could find that John Brown, who was born in 1854, he committed these crimes in Western Australia, and then he crossed the country over to Victoria, and what do you know it, he's doing the same thing again. That brings excellent and really interesting research outcomes that I know Mark is very, very keen. That's one of the ones Mark first told me when we got together. And then we are looking at the ability to have some image sharing as well. So this new images, at the moment, the archives are slowly gaining traction in regards to digitising images. At the moment, Mark has to have those open communication with them and say, hey, you've got any new images, and it brings them across. What if new images, as they became available, came into the prosecution's project that could then be queued to be transcribed, and this process keeps going without that manual intervention? Okay, so today, Mark has talked to you about the prosecution project. We've been able to show you a little bit about how that worked. And I talked to you about the Cultures and Communities project. We talked about the 360-degree data sharing model with the blockage. We then went through the possible solution, and I talked to you a little bit about the future. So that brings us to the end of that. Were there any questions that anyone might have?